Hi beautiful people, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Rorisang Mabogoane, and if you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's great to have you in my little corner of YouTube where we speak all things adulting, faith, career development, personal development, lifestyle, the works. Everything that is relevant for you to navigate your young adult lives. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That red button must turn gray. Give this video a massive thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Comment down below what you enjoyed about today's video and what other videos you'd like to see. Share this with anybody and everybody who you think might need it. And last but not least, hit those notification bells so that you do not miss another video. So without wasting any more time, let us get straight into today's video. So we're back again with another sit down, and I get so excited when I have guests because at least it's not my voice that's just being heard here. So in continuation of our career series, I've brought in one of my cousins, sisters. We're sisters, cousins. We're sisters. Yeah. And she is an extremely intelligent person that I am super excited to have on the channel. So she's going to be telling us a bit more about being an actuary, because she has gone in that field, and the degree is Actuarial Science and all of that stuff, but we'll unpack all of that. I'm super excited to have her share her insights with us. So before we get into the meat of the video, I'm going to give her a few seconds to introduce herself, and then we'll kick off.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Rori, for having me here. I think I am KELEFILWE, and I work as an actuary. I am a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa, and I'm also a chartered enterprise risk actuary. And I've been working for the past 8.5 years now, and I work for one of the largest financial services groups in South Africa. And yeah, I really enjoy my job. I think it's challenging, it's interesting, and it allows me to have impact in society and make sure that people in our country have financial freedom.
Okay, that's awesome. You said a lot of things that I already don't understand. So clearly this video is needed for everyone. But thank you for taking the time. Thank you for accepting my invite. And yeah, let's get into what an actuary actually is. Before we get into association of what is an actuary?
In a nutshell, actuaries are problem solvers and strategic thinkers that help organizations plan for the future and minimize financial losses. Actuaries have an incredible skill set, which is a combination of mathematical, statistical, analytical, commercial, communication, management skills. And they use that skill set effectively to help solve financial problems and business problems, and help that strategic planning for the future. And typically, for example, you'll have a reserving or capital actuary who are very critical, for example, in an insurance company to make sure that the business remains sustainable. They would determine the capital requirements and the reserves that are required to make sure that an insurance company can fulfill its promises to its policyholders, and that it has enough money to pay out claims in the event of a death or disability, for example. Then you'll have an actuary who works in pricing or product development, for example, and they are responsible for determining the right level of premiums to charge so that we can actually pay the claims in future.
You guys are the reason why insurances are killing us, essentially. Essentially, that's what you're saying.
I mean, I think there is a balance to be met in terms of making sure that a premium is competitive in the market, but also sustainable and profitable for the insurance company so that we remain in business. And there are also other industries that actuaries work in. So I think mostly we work in financial services, but because of our skill set, basically you could find actuaries in a lot of other industries, like there's an actuary working in construction, for example.
That's interesting.
So I think there's lots of opportunities as an actuary to work.
Okay, now that's interesting. And you spoke a lot about strategy, you spoke a lot about problem solving. That sounds quite similar to what I used to do as, or still do actually. But when I was a management consultant, a lot of that stuff clearly goes hand in hand. So would you say you work a lot with consultants, or is the work, yes, similar, but yours is more in depth because of the financial backing and the stats that you guys look at as well?
Yeah, so I think the work that actuaries do encompass what you've just mentioned, but it's focusing a lot on financial risk.
Okay.
So managing financial risk, and that's why we need the mathematics and the statistics, because it involves a lot of uncertainty and risk about events that could happen in the future.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of formulate what could that look like, and what do we need to do today to make sure that we get the outcomes that we want to get at that point in
so
time.
forth.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's interesting. That's interesting. I've learned quite a lot. I always just thought of actuaries as people who calculate premiums and stuff, and yes, calculate risk,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that it was actually deeper than that. So thank you so much for sharing that and for explaining that in depth, not just to me, but to the audience as well. I think that was one that I definitely learned a lot from. So, in order for us to be an actuary, what do you have to study? Not just in varsity, but are there specific high school modules that you need to also consider? What does that journey look like?
So I think starting from a schooling perspective, in order to get into an actuarial science degree, you need a distinction in mathematics. And I think, I'm not sure whether for English is a distinction, but you also need to do really well in English. There are some universities like WIT who also consider your marks in physical sciences, because that also kind of gives them an idea of your analytical skills and how you think and problem solving, etc. But mathematics and English are the two key subjects that you need to do really well at high school in order to get into an actuarial science degree in university. So in order to join the Actuarial Society of South Africa, which is the professional body for actuaries in South Africa, you have to either have completed a degree in actuarial sciences. That's typically the route that most actuaries take. However, if you don't have a degree in actuarial sciences, you could also get in with a degree in mathematical statistics or maths. Or you could write an entrance exam. So if you don't have either of those two, there's an entrance exam that you can write, and if you pass that, they will admit you, and you can start your journey of writing board exams. In terms of the route that's most optimal, doing a degree in actuarial science is the most optimal route to qualify as an actuary, and it has to be a degree from an accredited institution. So the Actuarial Society of South Africa on their website will provide details of those accredited institutions, as well as the entrance requirements that they have. And I say it's optimal because when you do a degree in actuarial science, you can get exempted from some of the board exams.
Why?
So in order to qualify as an actuary, you have to pass 15 board exams.
Jeez.
And also do some normative skills courses in order to qualify. And doing a degree in actuarial science helps you get exempted from some of those exams if you do well. So if you pass really well so there's a specific list of modules that are considered for exemptions. So if you do well in those modules, then you don't have to write the board exam once you start working. So for example, if you go to tax, which is where I went, you could get exempted from up to 11 exams.
Oh wow.
So that means, when you start working, you only have 4 to write and do the normative skills. So yes, I think that's the most preferred route, and majority of us kind of go through that route. But I think there are other options if you don't manage to do an actuarial science degree. It just means that you might take a bit longer to qualify as an actuary.
Okay, 15 board exams is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, considering that the previous video was with the chartered accountant and they only have, I think, 2. 15 is a bit insane. But nonetheless, like you mentioned, there's some universities that can then exempt you from some. So at least there is that route, and I'm assuming that shortens the timeline. So for someone who didn't go to an institution that exempts them, how does that, how many years more does that add to their journey?
Sure, I think it could be quite a lot, because even people who do the actuarial science degree can also take very long to qualify. So I think it adds a couple of years. So there's 2 sessions in a year in which you can write, in which you can write exams. But typically people do 1 exam per session. And if everything goes well, I mean, you'll have like two exams per session. So it could take you like maybe seven odd years to qualify. That's if you're starting with
we're all doctors if this is the case.
Yeah, and then so that could take very long. And I mean, if you fail 1 or 2 exams and you have to repeat, then it's it makes it even longer. So that's why I say preferably start with an actuarial science degree. Try to get as many exemptions as you can in university so that you shorten the time to qualification, because the exams are also not easy.
Of course.
They're quite challenging. So I think in varsity you kind of like immersed in academics, and you can study for them and try to do as best as you can to get those exemptions.
When work comes into play, it gets tricky as well.
Yes, because now you're managing work deliverables, you probably have family commitments and other things, and then you have to start in studying. So it's not always that easy to juggle.
And how did you manage that? How did you juggle between work, because you come from a big family, work, being a sibling, being a daughter, and also then going through your whole traineeship? Is it a traineeship before? What do they call it?
Not quite. So I think it's just kind of like getting work experience, and then there is work-based learning that you kind of go through. And it's just not structured the same way as the CA traineeship is structured, but we do have a 3-year requirement to do work-based learning, and then there's specific competencies that you have to meet, and that's part of the qualification requirements. I see. So for me, what helped is that I got my 11 exemptions from the University of Pretoria. So then I had only 4 exams to write outside of varsity. And I think because I was just starting out, I made sure to understand my requirements at work, chat to my manager, my peers, etc., to understand what is required of me, what does good performance look like, and then also formulate now how do I balance that with studying, how do I structure my time with studying. When I started working, I used to commute quite a lot, so I would try to study on the train on the way to work, but also understanding what is my optimal time for studying. I'm not a morning person, so I'd have to make sure that in the evenings I put in like 2 hours of studying, and on weekends as well. So I had to kind of like dial down in terms of make the sacrifice. I can't attend every party, every family gathering, because I have to study. And my parents and my siblings knew when my exam season was, like Easter. I couldn't enjoy Easter holidays that much, because that's typically
exam time.
Prep for exams needed to happen. So I think there's a bit of sacrifice that you have to do to make sure that you reach your goals. And for me, luckily, it didn't take that long, because I had the 11 exemptions, and then it took me an additional 2 years to complete the rest. So there was sacrifice, but at least not that long.
I must commend our family though. When it comes to academics, they literally, all our parents are very supportive, and they continue to push us. Literally, and then you can have fun. So I think that's one thing. If you are privileged enough to have a support structure like that, that will understand when you say mom, dad, bro, sis, I can't do it, I can't be there, then at least that helps alleviate that pressure, especially for myself as a recovering people pleaser, where I don't know how to say no. Having that support structure definitely would help as well. So shout out to our family. I must say shout out, because they are very supportive when it comes to academics and just making sure that we reach whatever goals we want to reach, and they don't let us settle for mediocrity.
Just understanding the value of education and how far that can take you.
Exactly.
I mean, look at us now.
I mean, listen. So you mentioned your board exams and so forth, and that leads to you being a part of the association and so forth. What do those designations look like? What do they entail? Is there more than one? Because I know with some other, career fields, there's multiple designations that one can explore. So from an actuarial science point of view, what type of designations can one then explore after they've completed their studies and they're undergoing their board exams and work-based training and so forth?
So broadly, there are 4 designations that the Actuarial Society of South Africa gives to its members, and that depends. So that's determined by at which point you are in terms of your exam progress. So almost like the pinnacle designation is a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa.
Which is where you are.
Yes, which means that you've completed all 15 board exams and the normative skills and work-based learning, etc. And then just below that is the associate member, and there you've pretty much done most of the exams, but not the specialist, the specialist exam. So to be a fellow, you have to write the specialist, or what we call the fellowship exam, which is broadly in 6 areas. So health, life insurance, short-term insurance, pensions, banking, and investments. So that's almost like a specialty exam, and that would help you kind of like work in those industries. But if you don't want to specialize, then you can end your studies at associate. It's almost like a GP.
I see. Okay.
Like a specialist versus GP kind of vibe. But it's not. I'll get to it later. But it's not quite the same. And then and you've got an associate member, and then you've got a technical member of the society, and that basically is a person who's done almost the foundational technical exams but didn't go any further. Typically, a lot of people aim for either the fellowship or the associate designation, and then there's a 4th one which you can get either when you are an associate member or a fellow member, and that's a chartered enterprise risk actuary, which is
what you mentioned at the beginning as well.
Yes. And that you get when you do the specific risk management exam, and that's not only recognized by the Actuarial Society of South Africa, but it's a global global association, and that helps actuaries who want to work specifically in risk management, like CROs maybe work in risk functions, and it's very broad because it's not just limited to financial services, but any kind of organization that requires like a risk management kind of function. So those are the 4 broad designations. Other actuaries also choose to branch out, specifically those who work in investments. They typically choose to go write CFA exams and become a CFA in addition to being an actuary, because they think it's useful for their career progress.
Okay, that's interesting. I was actually going to ask that as a sub question to say, do you find actuaries who go other ways? So that's interesting. I think the one question that I do have based off of the designations, how different is the work per, I don't want to call it a level, but per level?
So there are some, particularly if you work in financial services companies, like an insurance company, for example, there are specific roles that you can only occupy if you're a fellow member of the Actuarial Society of South Africa. So ending anywhere below that kind of limits some roles that you can occupy. But typically associate members and fellow members tend to do similar work. It's just that there's some things that associate members cannot do, and I think your career tends to progress much better and quicker if you're a fellow member rather than an associate member.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. That it's quite interesting to see how actually striving for more actually opens more doors, right? Because sometimes people might think, okay, I've qualified and I'm here, I'm, a hot shot, I'm, the big guy, whatever, but you don't then realize that if you're gonna settle at technical level, for example, there's so much more that you could do or achieve if you actually put your head down, study a bit more, and write the exams required to get to the higher levels as well. So that's pretty interesting, and I think that's a life lesson beyond just actuary and how to get there. It is a life lesson that should you ever feel like you're settling, you need to make sure that you pick yourself up, actually look around you, look at what is actually achievable and why you're going to settle if there's actually more that you can achieve. So that's pretty interesting. Okay. So you mentioned a lot of actuaries work in insurance companies and a lot of financial institutions, but where exactly, if you don't mind sharing some examples, can a fresh out of varsity graduate work, or someone who isn't fresh out of varsity but is qualified as an actuary? Where can I work as one?
Yeah, I think the one of the great things about having an actuarial science degree or being an actuary is the skill sets that you get, which is very transferable. So a lot of, I don't know the exact percentages, but a lot of actuaries do work in financial services, so insurance, pensions, health insurance, banking as well, consulting. But there's also quite a few actuaries who also work in what we call wider fields. There's actuaries working in climate change, for example, thinking about the impacts of climate change on society, on financial institutions, just broader on our country. I mentioned an example of an actuary who worked in that field, and that is because the skills are very transferable. And now we've got AI and machine learning and big data, and our technical background lends itself to kind of like us also moving into that direction and looking at what we can do with AI and machine learning, not just in financial services but broader than that. The actuaries who have startups in private equity, venture capital, there's actuaries working in government. So it's very broad, and as a person starting out, you could work anywhere basically. Any organization that requires those skills, you could work there, but we tend to find that a lot of people move into financial services.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's interesting that you speak about AI and how much it's doing within your guys' field, but does that, should I say, threaten or bring any challenges or pose any challenges to you guys as actuaries going forward? Because a lot of people are asking, what does AI mean for the future of my career? So what does that look like within the actuarial space?
I think I don't think AI and machine learning will necessarily replace actuaries and the work that we do. I think what it will do is help us simplify the work that we do. So a lot of the work that actuaries do involves lots of data, complex processes. So there's opportunity for us to incorporate AI to simplify processes and simplify some of these complexities that we deal with every day, and also supplement or complement our skill sets. So for example, we could use machine learning models, but as a professional, you have to understand what the machine learning model is doing, and it's not correct to just
throw some data in there, press a button, and keep it moving.
Use a black box that you don't even understand what it's doing. And I think our background involves a lot of statistics, and that's the foundation of actuarial science, and as well as machine learning. The foundation of machine learning algorithms is effectively statistics, and because we understand statistics, it helps us understand what these models are doing. And I think an important part of using machine learning models and AI is applying expert judgment. You don't want to find yourself where you're using black boxes and you're just taking results and then applying them in scenarios. You have to apply expert judgment, which is a skill that actuaries are really good at, considering all relevant factors and determining whether these results make sense or not, and whether they should be applied in that specific scenario or not. So I think more than anything, it's gonna complement the work that we're doing and simplify a lot of the complexities that we deal with every day.
Okay, that's interesting, and I think I find it so intriguing because I am very fascinated in AI. I'm always reading up on the next best thing, but because I don't have that statistical background, the information, if this is what they've given me on Excel, that's it. I'm going to throw it into a model and keep it moving, right? So the fact that you guys have that upper hand by actually understanding that data, and you basically know an end-to-end process. So you understand the data, how the model looks, how it's built, how you input that data into the model, and the results that it outputs and stuff. I find that so interesting, and I think that that's a skill set that very few people have. Low-key jealous. I'm low-key jealous.
A lot of us are taught garbage in, garbage out as well. So the data is also a very important part of doing modeling. If you build a fantastic model that does amazing things, but the data that you're using is crap, then the results are going to be crap. So I think just understanding that whole life cycle of a model, which is basically what we are trained to do, is also quite useful for us.
That's cool. That's cool. And I think very few degrees actually train you guys up like that, because for example, my honors degree is in investment management, and the assumption when you get into the working world is that because you studied investment management, you know how to build a model, for example. We don't know how to do that stuff. So the fact that you guys are trained in that way is pretty awesome. And I think it, like you mentioned, actuaries can work pretty much anywhere. It opens those doors for you guys to work anywhere. A consultant needs to know how to model financially. An actuary can come in and do that, maybe not with their eyes closed, but with their eyes closed, So that's pretty cool. And I genuinely think a lot of degrees should probably consider just a component, even if it's not a big one, but a small component of statistical modeling or mathematics of some sort that will help you once you get to the work world. Because you find that a lot of the times you actually learn these things on the job. When you could have actually just learned them at school. Some things we really should have been taught at school, but you learn it after the fact. So the next question I want to ask is, can one work as an actuary or within your guys' department without an actuarial science degree? You mentioned mathematics in the beginning of the video, but what does that look like? Can I come in, learn on the job training, or is it a bit more difficult for me to thrive as an actuary even if I don't have a degree? how does that look for someone who doesn't have an actuarial science degree?
So I think it is possible to qualify as an actuary without an actuarial science degree, either through math stats or any other degree that gives you the necessary foundation. So you'll need to do the entrance exam that I mentioned earlier. It just makes it a bit more challenging in your journey to qualification and working as an actuary without the actuarial background. But it's not impossible. So, we have to write 15 board exams, and that's the key component of your journey to qualifying. And if you're coming in, straight from varsity without any exemptions from your actuarial science degree, and you're starting from scratch, you'll have 2 sessions a year, exam sessions a year to write with the Actuarial Society of South Africa, and that would take you a minimum of like 7.5 years to qualify as an actuary. So it does take longer compared to a person who comes out with like 11 exemptions, for example. And there are also specific departments or companies or roles that would make it very challenging for you to thrive if you don't have an actuarial background. So for example, in a valuations department in an insurance company, that work is core technical actuarial science kind of work. So it would be very difficult to thrive in that kind of environment without an actuarial science degree, because it's basically application of what you learned in practice. So you would have to consider alternative roles to work in as you kind of like starting your journey to qualify as an actuary.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Like I keep saying, I think I'm gonna jump ship, and because I think the work that they're doing is so interesting, and I love the complexity of it. I didn't realize how deep it is until we sat down now. So it's actually really interesting. The one thing I want to highlight though, please guys do your research when it comes to the institutions that you are going to be applying to, because as she's mentioned, some institutions don't have those exemptions. So find out before you apply whether there'll be exemptions for you, and choose the one with the most, e.g. she chose UP. So go and find out if the WITSs of this world, the UJs and so forth, have that same structure. That way you can find loopholes in how to shorten your journey to becoming an actuary. So I think the second last question that I want to ask, and you don't have to give numbers, but kind of just explain how it works. But for a graduate fresh out of school, what would an entry-level salary look like, and how would that be structured?
So it's actuarial salaries depend on a lot of factors. So there isn't a set salary range that a graduate could earn once they leave varsity. So a key determinant of your salary when you start working as a graduate is the number of exemptions that you have from varsity, and that's why I said earlier that preferably do an actuarial science degree if you want to qualify as an actuary, because getting those exemptions also means you'll have a higher starting salary when you start working. And it also depends on what industry you're working in. So financial services companies tend to use a similar scale in terms of, so the big determinant is the exemptions, and they use similar scales to determine the salaries. But outside of that, then it's a bit different. So it also depends on which industry you work in. So if you're coming into an industry that employs a lot of actuaries, you tend to get standardization in that perspective. But organizations that don't really employ a lot of actuaries will determine it based on their philosophies and policies in those companies.
Okay, that's interesting. So basically, moral of the story: get exemptions. so that
Yeah.
when you start out, you're starting out with a pretty, decent range or pretty decent number, because clearly the lower you are, the lesser it's going to become.
Yeah.
And in this in Cyril Ramaphosa's economy, guys, we can't.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah. And also pass those exams as you start working, because your salary also increases with each exam that you pass.
Yeah.
It's typically very generous exam increases. And then, until you ultimately qualify as an actuary and you get your qualification bonus, and then your earning potential also increases thereafter.
That's cool.
So, yeah, just stay the course, write the exams, pass them, and it's rewarding in a lot of aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. In closing, I just want to ask, because you've mentioned a whole lot about the work that you guys do, and the impact and the value that it brings. But what would you say are the benefits of being an actuary, or pursuing that career field for anyone who wants to go into that?
I think the opportunity to do impactful work, meaningful work, and see your work impact strategy, impact like bottom line P&L, impact society, enabling people to have financial freedom. And for actuaries, for example, who work in climate change, impactful in that way. So the work that actuaries do is quite impactful. And I think secondly, being in a profession that allows you to work in a wide range of roles, industries. Actuaries are not limited to just financial services companies. There's a wide variety of industries that the skill set can really contribute meaningfully to. And not just in South Africa. So the Actuarial Society of South Africa has mutual recognition with other societies in the world, which means that you could move to Europe, for example, and not have to start your actuarial journey from scratch. So you can work there, just do a few courses to understand the regulatory context and the laws in that country, and just continue adding value as an actuary. There's very few actuaries in South Africa, and globally there's about 1,800 fellows. Fellows in South Africa, which means that the skill set is very scarce and highly demanded. So opportunities will be there everywhere. And we don't necessarily have to worry too much about job security, not getting a job, even and so forth. Even considering like technological advancements. We're not worried necessarily about like AI is going to replace our jobs. It's about how do we incorporate it into the work that we're doing. So and also it's a kind of like a niche prestige profession to be a part of. We've got like very high professional standards that the society maintains. So when you're dealing with an actuary, you're dealing with a proper professional,
the real deal.
We'll consider even things like ethics and professionalism, etc. So I think it's an incredible profession to be a part of, and it just allows you the opportunity to add value in lots of different places. And the salary is also good. For those who are wondering, actuaries are well-paid professionals, and it doesn't come at a cost of work-life balance. So I think some equivalent professionals who perhaps earn similarly to actuaries tend to have like pretty hectic work-life situations.
Yeah.
So I think relatively actuaries get paid really well without lots of stress.
Okay, no,
I mean,
that's good.
it is challenging work,
Yes.
but it's not like, you are working
Around the clock 24/7.
yeah, like,
Okay.
14
good
hours
to
a
know.
day, 7 days a week kind of
Because-
vibes.
Listen, I come from that environment, so listen.
Yeah.
It's not cute. So I really value work-life balance. So you saying that means a lot, not just to me, but I'm quite sure to a lot of people who have been following my channel for a while, that work-life balance in some industries is non-existent. So I'm actually quite grateful to the actuary environment and that community that you guys still value things like work-life balance, where you can focus on other things that are important, because at the end of the day our careers are not just our lives are not just our careers,
definitely.
you have families, you have friends, you have partners, you have children and so forth, and if your whole life is revolving around work, at the end of the day, when you look back in 20-30 years, you're gonna say, I should have attended that birthday party, I should have attended this, I should have been with that person then, but work was just too crazy. So I'm really glad that from your perspective, you don't have to worry about things like work-life strain and all of that stuff. So yeah, in closing, and I know that you didn't prepare for this, so I'm going to put you on the spot, but what advice would you give to a young person who is starting out their career, regardless of whether it's actuary or not, but starting out their career, not knowing where to start? What advice would you give them?
I think I would start with figuring out your why. So thinking about what kind of career am I trying to build, or what kind of career looks good to me and why. And I think for me that's really what was very helpful for me in choosing this career path. Just taking time to reflect about what is my why, and what would a career look like that's aligned to that. And then secondly, thinking about your strengths. So what are the things that I'm really good at, and what are the things that I'm really passionate about? I think that will help you, give you some direction. And you don't have to, I mean, if you're 18 years old, you don't necessarily have to have a clear cut answer. I think having some sort of direction is useful, but don't be worried if you don't know exactly how to articulate it. I think it just helps you get some sort of direction. And then look at careers that are aligned to those three components. I think another useful thing is to talk to people. I think it's very good that people are watching this video so they can get exposure to the different kinds of careers that are out there. Speak to people, understand what they're doing, and whether you find it fascinating or interesting or not. And if you do, go do research. I think luckily now we live in a world where a lot of people have smartphones and can connect to the internet. So as soon as you hear something that really resonates with you, go and Google. So if Actuarial Science feels like a thing for you, there's lots of material online that you can get that will help you understand what is this career, what are the requirements, what kind of person do you need to be able to thrive in this career path. And then just also reflect internally. Ask your parents know you very well, they'll know what you're good at, what could be a good career path for you. Also your teachers, I think. Also thinking about what subjects do I like the most. For me it was math, so understanding that about yourself will help you choose the right career for you. And I think I would advise people to think about careers that are not limiting, because I think as the world advances and progresses, jobs are not linear anymore. Jobs are not like, career paths are not like a straight line.
You're
anymore.
touching here. I'm a banker, but I'm touching project management. I'm doing this.
I think finding degrees that will help you be a bit more versatile and holistic,
Mm.
so that if like 10 years from now you decide actually this career doesn't work for me anymore,
You can still jump into something
you have
else.
you know, yes, it's easy for you to kind of like pivot and do something different. So I think also think about those kinds of things, because I mean, jobs that exist today could possibly not exist 10 years, 20 years from now. So I think also thinking about choosing a career path that will help you be relevant and agile and, you know, pivot where you need to pivot, I think will be useful to think about.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you so much for the insights and the knowledge. I learned a lot, so I'm quite sure that everyone that is on the other side of the screen learned a lot as well. Thank you for taking the time to actually break down what this career field looks like and what people can do with it. I think it's a lot, it brings a lot of value, especially to someone who either is trying to pivot their career and start afresh, or someone who is, you know, in high school trying to finish or trying to figure out what to do next and so forth, because I get a lot of these questions on how to choose the right careers and all of that. And I think that was the basis of why I started the series, because I don't know it all, you know. So bringing in experts like yourself really helps us, you know, impart that knowledge into other people. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This has been really good, and I hope it's been useful for the people who've listened. So thank you.
Awesome. So thank you to everyone for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and share this with anybody and everybody in your circle. Let's continue to be our best selves. Let's continue to strive for better. And whether that is academically, career-wise, and so forth, continue to just be better. 1% better today than you were yesterday. So comment, like, subscribe, and share this with all your people. And with so much love and so much light from me to you, have an amazing rest of the day. Stay safe and God bless. Bye, guys.